Hello friends, welcome to another Indie Audition video. I'm Chris, and today I'm playing Return of the Obra Dinn. Return of the Obra Dinn, I think you could call it a nautical detective game. It's pretty unique. It's the second game, second major release anyway, by Lucas Pope, kind of a one-man army, who made a pretty well-known indie game called Papers, Please. In that game you were the border guard on the border of a Soviet state. In this game, you are an insurance adjuster, but an insurance adjuster for the East Indies Trading Company, and you also have a magic pocket watch, as we'll see, that lets you do some pretty amazing things. And your job is to check out this ship that has just returned and returned from a few years overseas and find out what happened to its crew. A few things about this video before we get started. First of all, this is an Indie Audition video, which means I'm going to be showing you the opening moments of the game to give you an introduction to it. At the end, I'll be talking about what I like. Usually, I tell you whether I'm going to be coming back to this game and playing it some more. There's an exception in this case because I've played this game to the end, because it's that good. So here you go, immediate recommendation, immediate callback. Return of the Obra Dinn is a game you're going to want to play. I think you'll see why as we get into it, especially if you're looking for something different. You will really appreciate what this game has to offer. So also, another thing to note, the game can get a little bit graphic. The visuals are fairly stylized, as you can see here. We'll talk about that in a moment, but it still can be, it's a relatively gory game, so it may or may not be your thing. There's a lot of people dying in a lot of terrible ways that you are going to get to discover as you play Return of the Obra Dinn. All right, well, let's dive in. I think you'll get a sense for the rest of it. Oh, I was going to talk about these visuals real quick. You can already see here on this opening screen that this looks pretty unique. It is two colors, black and white, and really it takes its cue from the visuals from old games on the Macintosh. The game I think of, this is like the original Macintosh. We're talking about, what was that, was that the late 80s? So the game I think of the most is Dark Castle for the Macintosh. I mean, that was a game you'll see use this sort of outlined black and white style, and then for shading this sort of dithered look. And Return of the Obra Dinn is a full 3D game, but it captures that style of artwork in its 3D rendering. Pretty incredible, actually quite an achievement on the visual front, and it makes it look like nothing else that's out there right now. All right, I'm going to get out of the way here real quick so we can jump into the game. And let's begin. You can see it took me about 11 hours to play through once, so that gives you a sense for how long it is, although it requires a lot of your powers of deduction, so you might solve it faster than I do. I'm going to jump in with a brand new game. Lost at Sea, 1803. The good ship Obra Dinn. Built 1796, London, 800 tons, 18-foot draft. Captain R. Witterell. Crew 51 men. Last voyage to Orient. Cape Rendezvous unmet. Contact East India Company, London office, for enquiries or testimony. The Honorable East India Company. Attention, Chief Inspector, Insurance and Claims, London office. That's me. The Obra Dinn has returned. Dispatch to Falmouth immediately and prepare a full assessment. Falmouth? I don't know how the British would pronounce that. Falmouth, I'm gonna guess. They always sort of swallow half the letters. Okay. Falmouth, England, 1807.
Company man woke me up. Said you'd need ferry to the Obra Dinn. Not many eager for that job. Seems a bit late if you ask.
I didn't.
What's in the box?
I don't know. I'll hoist it up in a few minutes.
Hey! How?
Carefully.
Okay, so here we are. As I said, this is a full 3D game, first-person view, and there is the Obra Dinn. Basically, the whole game is going to take place just on this ship, but we're going to get to see into its past, as it were, to find out what happened here. That's going to have to do with that box, but first we're going to just go explore a little bit. Oh, hey, fun little side note. You notice I had a male character in this opening, but half the time you'll get a female character. So those lines spoken by the main character, who speaks very few lines, they recorded with both male and female variants, just for fun. So here we are on the good ship Obra Dinn. This is an incredibly detailed rendering of a 18th, 19th century sailing ship. And we've already found a dead body. We'll want to figure out what's up with that. So as it said, I am just the insurance adjuster, here to find out what happened on board the Obra Dinn. We're going to get a little bit more information about that now that we've walked around.
Oi!
We'll get our box.
It's too heavy!
It's too heavy. All right. Sigh.
It's too heavy. Take it yourself or open it here.
Fine, fine. We can open it here. There's a book. And something else. Okay, first of all, this book. Return of the Obra Dinn, a catalogue of adventure and tragedy, 1807. Preface. I trust that now you find yourself aboard the Obra Dinn. I expected this day to come, and my every intention was to tell the ship's strange tale within the pages of this book. Regrettably, failing health has allowed me to produce only the basic outline that follows. Your presence on the Obra Dinn is critical. I leave the discovery of its fate and the completion of this book in your hands. The next few pages will seem bewildering at first. All will make sense in time. Use the pocket watch to determine the identity and fate of everyone aboard. Complete each chapter accurately and return the book by guaranteed post to the French Office of Affairs in Morocco. The bargain chapter will remain unknown to you. I possess the details within, but have elected to keep them private for now. Henry Evans. Okay, so we have our contents here, and we can jump to different chapters. Let's take a look at the first few pages, because these come in very handy. We have a map, the journey, which is going to show, so the dotted line was the path that the Obra Dinn was supposed to take. We'll discover as we go where it has been. We have diagrams of each of the decks of the ship. These are slowly going to open to us as we play. Main deck, which is where I was already walking around. The gun deck, what's called the orlop deck, and down below the cargo hold. So, little markers will show up on here to show different events that have happened. Here's our crew manifest, very important. It has a list of everyone who was on board. Crew and passengers, there are a number of passengers. What their jobs were, where they're from, and then a column for fate. That is, how did they die? 60 people we're going to have to determine. Now there's this these sketches that show basically every member of the crew and all the passengers in one form or another in a few different pictures. One, a sketch of everyone sort of hanging out on deck, having a good time, gambling, dancing, etc. This inset image of the Formosan royalty, so some of the passengers are members of the Formosan nation. I meant to look up whether that's a real thing, but I don't think so. I think that's invented. And then an image entitled Justice at Sea, in which a man is being executed while others watch. So, we use this to help identify people that we see in the rest of the game. How do we see them? Great question. We're about to get into that. Real quick, let me show you. The rest of the book are these empty pages, split up into chapters, and each page is going to be an event that generally involves someone dying somehow. And so as we jump around in here, we're going to see what happened to everyone, and we're going to fill this in. Let's see how that works here in a minute. I've got to get through to the end of the book before it's going to let me close it. Oh, there's also a glossary, so we can find out what different titles mean. Who's the purser? Oh, he's the guy who deals with all the cargo, right. What's the gun deck? Oh, that's where the cannons are. That sort of thing. This mysterious little skull glyph here, we'll see what happens with that. But I am going to close the book, and we're going to take a peek at this little lovely thing. Memento Mortem. Remember death. That's actually what this pocket watch does. It lets us remember, or frankly just experience, someone's death. So we saw that skeleton on the deck. Let's go back there. And now we can use our pocket watch.
Captain! Open the door! Kick it in. Ah! Lest we break it down and take more than those shells!
You bastards may take exactly what I give you!
Okay. So we heard the audio, what happened during this moment. Now we get to see the moment itself, but it is just that moment. It is frozen, still frame, in that second where the guy whose skeleton we were looking at on the ground right here, the moment he dies. So, look at that. We have a few folks here, and we've got to figure out who are they, what exactly happened, and eventually we'll piece together why all of this is happening. That'll take a little bit longer. But here's what we do. You can zoom in on somebody. When you do, it's going to show them in one of those images so you can relate them to each other. And after a certain amount of time, it's going to force us to go to the book and fill in a page. So here we go. It's taking us to the chapter called The End. It's going to show us where on the trek this particular moment happened. And here we are, part 1, outside the captain's quarters. Who is this? How did they die? So, this unknown soul met an unknown fate. What we have to do, we can select... it is going to do... I was afraid it wasn't going to do the tutorials. This person's face appears blurred throughout the book. This blurring indicates that you don't yet have sufficient information to determine their identity. Their fate may be known and can be entered now. Trying to name them while their face is blurred would be unproductive. So the game is telling us that basically we don't have the information we need to figure out who this person is yet. So we shouldn't bother trying to replace this phrase, unknown soul. Faces will become unblurred when the information necessary to identify them has been revealed in some way. Okay, great. So, no point in doing that, but we can fill in his fate. So here we have a list of all kinds of ways that someone can die. Right now it's set to unknown. We could say they're alive. Some people are alive, and we could just tell you where they're living. Some people have been axed, burned, clawed, clubbed. Whoa, all right. Well, this guy, pretty straightforward, he was shot. What was he shot with? He was shot with a gun. By who? Can we answer this question? Let's think about what we just heard. Someone was banging on a door, telling the captain to open up. Then the captain said, "You'll take exactly what I give you." We heard a door slam open, and we heard a gunshot. Let's look around a little bit more before we fill this in. But I think we can determine who that was. We can read that text. The lines marked with an X here tell you this is the word spoken by the person who has died. So whoever this guy is, he's the one who said, "Open the door, Captain." So we know he's not the captain. And then someone else says, "Kick it in." Probably our dead man's friend. And he says, "Lest we break it down, take more than those shells." And then there was the captain who said, "You bastards may take exactly what I give you." I think from that we can come here and say he was shot by Captain Robert Witterell. Okay. We can also look here. Where was the corpse found? The footprints are where we're standing right now. So if you need any reminders where that corpse is. And then this will show you all the people who are in this scene and where they are in the images. So you can kind of put faces to people in the world. So this guy with the stocking cap looks like our friend that is accompanying the dead man. There's our dead man who was shot standing next to the captain. You know, he's blurred. The captain's not. We know who the captain is now. So he comes through perfectly sharp now. What's going on up here? Someone else is there. Sound of an opening door tells us we just gained access to something else. This is the door that will take us out of our particular vision. But we have a mystery here because, let's see here, we can zoom in on this guy and it'll say, oh yes, that's him in that picture. We kind of already know that this is the captain. Yep. Where is that fourth person? And I don't know that I remember exactly where he is. Aha, there he is. One more guy. He's going somewhere else. What's he up to? Perhaps we'll find out. So if we've gathered as much information as we can here, we will return to the present. And what's happened now is, and you'll see it's sort of signified by this fuzziness here, this door has been opened for us. We can also open certain doors that are not locked on our own. Let's see if there's anything inside them. There's one here. This one's already open, but now we have access, because we've been to that previous vision, we have access to the captain's quarters. The X on this door means it's locked. We can't open it. And there's two corpses here. We can also go out on this balcony if we want. Look out into the ocean. There's a curious thing. Can zoom in on it, but can't do anything else with that. A mystery that might be solved. There's a knife on the floor. There's a couple knives on the floor. There's a sharp stick or spear or something on the floor too. Let's start with this dude here. How did that chap die?
Where are they? Must be in here someplace.
They're at the bottom of the sea.
That's a lie.
Okay. So, the captain, he's got a knife. He's being stabbed in the shoulder, but he's also cutting the throat of our friend with the stocking cap. The other guy is not here yet. There's a gun on the floor. Aha. So that's where he was going. Coming down onto this back deck. And maybe coming in here to help one of these two guys in this struggle, we're going to go to the book and fill in a new page. Inside the captain's quarters. Now again, we don't know who this guy is yet. We don't have any information about him. But what we know is, how was he killed? He was knifed. By who? The captain. So we basically got a captain who's already a double murderer. Great. There's our dialogue. And we know the people involved. No other surprises this time. So, this guy's body is there now. At this point in time, he's just dead on the ground. Again, we know there's no one else alive involved. We can look up here and just explore, make sure there's nothing to see. Head back to the present and see if anything new has opened up to us. Ah, we have not looked at the second corpse. Nothing new is open, but we need to figure out who this is. It's either the captain, or it's our friend who is sneaking in the back door. And somebody's making some awful noises. So this is why I kind of warned you that the game is it's pretty violent, because sounds like what you just heard, which I believe was this guy slowly dying as his throat had been cut. They do a really remarkable job with, I think, some very realistic sound effects and voice acting throughout the game. It's very, very impressively done for a small indie title. So here's our captain. And he just beat this dude in the head. So that's our dead guy. And he got stabbed. So he's been stabbed in the arm, stabbed in the side, and killed, you know, a mere 3 people. We have access to this little room in the captain's quarters. And look what we found. We'll have to come back for that, because we're going off to the book. Hello, book. Alright, things continue to unfold. Here inside the captain's quarters, this guy, who we do not know, was burned, clawed, clubbed, crushed, not decapitated. I think clubbed is going to be poison shot, speared, spiked, strangled, torn apart, clubbed by public enemy number 1, Captain Robert Witterell. I mean, who knows? Maybe it was justified, right? Sure. So, killed by Captain Witterell. I think that's as much as we can say here. There is one more section to this part. Something else is open to us. Now we're still in this vision. So we're in the past. In this moment when the captain is killing these guys off, there is a woman in this bunk. Who is that? Let's see if we can find out. We'll have to go back to the present day. We looked at these 2 corpses, and because we've done so, notice again I mentioned those knives on the floor, sharp stick on the floor. The game is meticulous about accounting for all these things, because any one of them can be clues. Oh, so there's a body here, gun on the floor, and there's a body here. Let's start with this one.
Abigail, your brother, my
Uh-oh.
Please forgive me for everything.
Oof. Well, okay then. As these guys are dead on the floor, it appears that Captain Ritterall shot himself through the heart? Yeah, through the heart. That means, guess what? This is probably Abigail. We'll get there, but for now, we're going to need to go to our book. Unfortunately, it sort of forces us to wait. That's okay, we can explore a little more. We've seen most of this at this point. There we go, off to our book. I honestly don't know that I really like that sort of timed transition to the book. I think they could bring up an icon of the book in the corner or something like that and just say, hey, you want to go back to this as soon as you can. Okay, we know this guy. This guy. This person's face is no longer blurred, which means that they can now be identified. Use the book and the pocket watch to gather enough information to deduce their identity. Revisit memories on the ship using the pocket watch to study relationships, appearances, and activities. Use the book, maps, crew manifest, and artist sketches, pages 2 through 4, along with the individual conversation logs to find clues about names, relationships, appearances, and roles. There were 60 people on the ship when it left England. Determining everyone's identity and fate will not be easy. Decisive information is rare. You will have to make assumptions using partial information. Some identities may only be revealed through a process of elimination. Good luck. Yeah, so that summarizes the game. Now, we've determined that this is the captain, and suicide is an option, suicide by gun. This may or may not be correct, it tells us. Fates are validated in sets of 3. Correctly identify at least 3 people and their fates to have the information typeset into the book. So once we find, once we set through this interface here, the fates of 3 people, if they're correct, then they'll go from being written here in this handwritten font to being typed in. And that means those are definitely correct, and it can eliminate some possibilities from all the other things that we're trying to figure out. Because later on in the game, you have like a dozen deaths that you don't know quite who they are. You have some guess at it. You may not even be sure exactly how they died, and you're trying to sort through all this information bit by bit. Again, we get his text, location of the corpse, etc. Let's close this. We've earned access to a new part of the ship. But actually, it's time for us to check out the corpse of this woman in this particular berth. So now that we've written all of the pages in this chapter, it shows 4 X's down here. Took me a little while to figure out what that means. That means there are 4 deaths that we need to sort out. When we do, that chapter is complete. Okay. Are you ready? Oh no. Well, here's what happened to Abigail. Is it a storm? No. No, ladies and gentlemen. Much, much worse. So the Obra Dinn was attacked by a monster. A giant tentacled monster. There's a guy who's cut in half. Guy running for his life. Some people, yeah, appropriately shocked. Some of the women passengers over here. One guy trying to shoot somebody. There's a dude being pulled up into the sky. So, here's the thing. We gotta figure out who all these people are. Now that's gonna take some time. Trust me. And we won't do it in the course of this video. But we're starting in on a new chapter. Now, keep in mind, probably seems obvious, these moments take place before the ones we saw earlier. They're earlier in the book, for one thing. So, the corpse, you notice it says over here, the corpse was moved post-mortem. So she was killed out here on the deck by that mast, but she was moved into the bed after she was dead. We saw the moment of her death. So she didn't, like, die later from, concussive injuries or something like that. So who is she? Well, we know the name of one woman, and that is Abigail. She was in the room adjacent to the captain's quarters. Abigail Hoskett Witterell was the wife of the captain. This is probably the captain's wife. How did she die? What's most appropriate? Crushed? Crushed by falling rigging. Seems accurate. Okay. 10 other people were present. So these are all those other people we saw somewhere on the deck, or in some cases, held up by a tentacle in the air. All people that eventually, somewhere down the line, maybe not even till close to the end of the game, we will identify. Let's do some more deduction, though. What else did we learn? Let's go back to the final chapter. Because what did the captain say before he shot himself? Abigail. Okay, we know who Abigail is. Your brother, my friend, I shot him. Dead. You'll notice this guy is no longer blurry. We should be able to say who he is. Can we? Well, he was shot by the captain, so he's Abigail's brother and the captain's friend. How can we figure out who Abigail's brother is? Well, her name is Abigail Hoskett Witterell. Who else is a Hoskett? William Hoskett, first mate. And guess what? That's the third person we've identified. So now, each of these will get written into the book. Fun little music cues here. And each time we get a group of 3, we're going to get 3 little lines added to that little skull glyph there. And now, something new is happening. I'm back in this memory, the death of Abigail, where we left off, and I can still look around. Who's this guy? Oh, that's him. He's there stabbing the giant octopus. That guy. Now it's telling me, though, I have a new action. to use this watch while I'm still in this memory. All the previous ones I've gone back to the present day and entered a new area and found a new corpse that was there. But this one, I'm going to find somewhere here. Where is it? Well, it's going to be very bright white, like that. So I can go up to this guy, who clearly is dead, or died just slightly previously, and use the pocket watch. And suddenly I'm back in the present day, but the watch is doing something, and I actually can't move. I'm going to click, and this cloud, or little trail of smoke, comes off of the watch and shows me a corpse, not quite real, sort of a vision of that body, here on the deck in the present day. So this is another way for me to discover new corpses, is to find them in visions of the past and add them here to the present day. So he's not really here anymore, but I can now act as if he is, and that means I can go back to the moment that he died. We might have some guesses how that happened. That sounded very bad. So there he is. Who is this guy? Huh? He's got tattoos on him. There's this guy again. So he was over here later. I think we're a few moments earlier. Yeah, of course we are, because he hasn't been, you know, torn in half. Oh, wait, no, he's just been torn in half. Again, moment of his death. Another gentleman here. This guy who later I think we might have seen shooting with a couple of pistols over by the stairs to the upper deck. He is tossing guns to people, if I'm interpreting that right. We're going to go to the book here, but there's more to discover. Yeah, the doom is right. Part 7. So we're filling this in backwards. Who is this guy, and how did they die? Well, do we know who it is? I don't know. They might explain this to us later, but you see these two triangles? That tells us with how much certainty we should be able to identify this person. If there's one triangle, which you might have noticed was above the last two guys, the captain and the first mate, their pictures, that means we should have the information to identify them very definitively. 2 triangles, not so much. 3 we'll even see means you could figure this out, but it's probably kind of a stretch, a little bit of guesswork, but it's conceivably possible. So typically what happens once we start to get a lot of sort of open cases, as it were, people whose fates we need to identify, we'll want to go through all of them and find the ones with the fewest number of triangles and try to identify them first, because they're the easiest ones to identify. Let's go with how. Let's just fill in for now how this guy died. He wasn't exactly decapitated, but we can say he was torn apart. By what? And luckily we have beast on the list. So this guy was torn apart by a terrible beast. Lots of other folks were present. It might help us later to know that. Uh-oh, this means we have more corpses to find in this scene. Maybe not surprising, given just how terrifying of a scene this is. We're looking for a glowing white corpse. There it is. He does not look to be in good shape. once again. Here's something fun I noticed. If I look away from the smoke, it doesn't move until I turn back, and then it continues on its way. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Oh, maybe it finished. It's over here. It was already close enough to done, I guess. My little trick didn't pay off. Okay. Who is this guy? Throw the powder. Presumably we're talking about gunpowder. Whereas our dead gentleman, he is there in that explosion. That's him. So it looks like he was, like this guy, tied to some of the rigging to keep him on board. Maybe planning on throwing some gunpowder at the monster, and instead got picked up and blew up with it. Oof. Alright. Meanwhile, there's folks running up from down below with guns. He's gonna toss those guns to these guys. Oh, we know what happens to this gentleman with the tattoos. Things are going from... I don't know if you'd say they're going from bad to worse. Actually, they're kind of just going from bad to bad to bad, or from worse to bad, because we're moving backwards in time. Time travel's confusing, isn't it? Alright, who is this? No idea. How did he die? Burned? Drowned? Exploded. Blasted by an explosion. Seems accurate. So that was somebody else, not him, talking, telling him to throw the powder. That makes sense. Again, if it would have an X next to that line if it was from him. The other folks who were present, a lot of them we're already familiar with. There's somebody we're not familiar with. Guy with a turban. Huh. And something has opened up. One thing that's opened up is this little mystical door that, like before, I like how it's oriented straight up, despite the deck being tilted about 40 degrees to one side. So, we may have access to a new part of the ship. Let's go take a look at it. The gun deck. These doors are locked. Yep. Cannons, some of which are not where they should be. That is not right. And we see a dead body here. That's no good. No good at all. These, if we looked on our ship map, we can find out who these belong to. I think these might be for like the midshipmen, or maybe it's not the midshipmen. These might actually even be for the. Oh no, these guys here are for the first mate and second mate and third mate. So these are their berths. Back room, chairs and tables, toilets. Okay. A knife and blood coming out from underneath this door. And another corpse. Interesting. Let's start with this guy over here underneath the cannon. And then we might be close to done with our demonstration because I don't want to get too far and spoil the fun of deduction for all of you fine viewers. Uh-oh. Okay. The giant octopus, or squid, or whatever, is still out there. We're in the middle of trying to deal with that problem. There's some of these guys here trying to figure out what to do. And here's our young sailor who's just been smashed by a loose cannon. That's no good. This guy, who it's telling us we may be able to identify. And this looks like someone else who's dead because he doesn't have a head. Who is this guy? We don't know. How did he die? Crushed by a cannon. Okay. Let's go. I think this would be a good one. We'll go one more. Oh, which one is it going to be? There's a dude under there too. So we're still in this vision of the guy getting crushed. But we're going to find out what happened to this poor sap who's missing his upper, what, fifth quarter? Follow the smoke trail. Alright, I can step over this. Alright, what happened to him? Okay, so a cannon went off inside the ship, and that answers the question of where that guy's head went. The way that he said it, the fuse definitely made it sound like the fuse was lit, then maybe the cannon moved, possibly because of the giant tentacle that's on it, and ended up blasting him inside here. Sometimes on the periphery of these scenes you can see and find interesting things. I don't know if we will in this one, I'm not sure. We recognize some of these guys who will be up on deck a little bit later. That guy is the guy who, at the end of our story, the stuff we saw first, was crawling down to come after the captain and got clubbed in the head by him. Oh, there are two victims here. Two victims. I saw one. Do we know which one it is? I don't know that we do. So one of these guys was blasted by a cannon, at least. Maybe both of them, but I feel like we only saw one. Let's close this. We can jump to another corpse, but let's take a quick look here and see if we can figure out. Either find the second character. Can't go in there. You can't open doors in visions. Well, look at that. Top hat. Is it this guy's top hat? Seems likely. Let's open our book. This guy has a top hat. We still don't know who he is, but he was definitely shot with a cannon by, we don't know. Presumably the person who lit the fuse. That would happen to be our next corpse here. He is underneath the cannon. How exactly did we get here? We're about to find out. A little tricky to get in range of him. There we go. What happened to him? Well, he was squished by a tentacle and a cannon. And there is the fuse lit, which means that these gentlemen, one with a top hat, whose top hat is not on, ends up flying around, and this guy, who is the other one on that same page, also wrapped up by tentacles. We know what's going to happen to them. They are not long for this world. Presumably that means this guy also got shot, although it's possible, and we may have to figure out, maybe he was dragged out the window by a tentacle before the cannon went off. Although he died at the exact same moment as the other guy, because they're on the same page. So these weren't sequential deaths, they were instantaneous. Okay, new guy we don't know. How did he die? Crushed by a beast or by a cannon? Beast or cannon? I'm going to say the beast is the main crusher in this case. That could turn out to be wrong and mean that I can't complete this. I think, I'm not positive, but I also saw some indications that sometimes there's a little wiggle room and you can pick one of multiple valid answers. At least I rarely found that, like, oh, it was way, way pickier than I expected to be. I mostly would complete them when I expected to, and I think that indicates there could be multiple valid answers for a few of them. There's his top hat. And now, where do we leave? We go here to leave this particular vision, and we'll go back to the future. That takes us back to where we started, all these visions, but we have... Oh no, the last one we went to, that was the guy underneath that cannon. And have we gained access to anything new? I don't know. We can't go up there. We were able to get back here before. Probably we haven't, because there's another body, if you'll recall, in here. But I think I'm going to leave that particular mystery for you all to solve. Let's sort of break down this game, talk a little bit about what it does well, what it does not so well, and I've already given you my recommendation, but, oh, hey, I'm wrong. Let's take a peek back here. It's the foremast, I think that's called, and some more remains, so a couple mysteries here to solve on the Obra Dinn. But now it is time to dive into my audition notes. Okay, so what do I think of Return of the Obra Dinn? Well, look, you know what I think. I've already told you. I've played the whole game. I love it. I think you should play it too. So yeah, it gets a callback. it's already basically gotten a callback. I've finished the game. You should play it. You absolutely need to check it out. I'm hoping that what you saw of it whets your appetite to give this game a try real soon. Let's get into the details, though. Like, what is it specifically that I really love? Well, first of all, this game is just brilliantly conceived. One, it's just meticulously constructed as a story, as a mystery. It's everything so well considered and so detail rich. But also, for a game that's made by a single person, and to be clear, 98% of this game was made by one person. He did all the code. He did the art. He did the music for this game. Basically everything but the voiceovers from various actors, which obviously he couldn't do all those voices convincingly. So other than that, Lucas Pope did pretty much all of this game. And what's brilliant is that you can tell he conceived of this game in such a way that it played to his strengths and it avoided the things that are particularly costly that he couldn't afford to do. For instance, there's really no animations in the game other than the ship rocking back and forth and a little bit of the character at the very beginning. There's not really any animation. That would have taken forever to show like some of these flashback scenes actually happening. He couldn't do that himself. He'd need a team of animators. Well, he didn't do that. The game is told in these snapshot moments, which aren't just simpler and easier to execute, but also really manage to be evocative at the same time. So while we're talking about visuals, I love the way this game looks. There's nothing like it. And it's retro, but in a totally different way than anything is retro. This isn't pixel art exactly, certainly not in the standard sense. This 1-bit, two-color art style with this stippled shading is evocative of the past, but yet something you just never see. And seeing it in real-time 3D is something you've absolutely never seen before, and he just pulls it off really well. I have to emphasize that doing what he did with the shaders to allow this game to look like it does, that's not simple. Yes, it's retro artwork, but that's not just that's not just the press of a button. This took a lot of tuning and experimentation to get everything outlined properly, things to be dark when they are in shadow and light when they're not, etc. That's really incredible technical art design. Also, the audio. The audio is spectacular. I mean, the Foley work, the cracking masts and shouting and people getting crushed and exploded and all of that, it's really convincing. The voice acting is really good. You don't always expect that from an indie game that can't always afford to get that kind of quality, but they absolutely got it on Return of the Obra Dinn. Okay, let's talk gameplay. Put most simply, I feel like what's great about the game is it makes you feel smart. I mean, first it makes you feel really dumb for quite a while, but then eventually you crack one or another little mystery nut and you feel like you're brilliant. You discover some other way to identify who is who that you hadn't even realized was a thing before. And then suddenly you're making all this progress and you're putting two and two together and you just feel like a real detective. I think that's why you feel smart, is because this is actual mystery solving. This is deduction. In a lot of games with puzzles or mysteries, it's like all the dominoes have kind of been set up for you by the designer. And so you don't necessarily feel smart, you feel like you kind of pieced together what they intended, but it was kind of set up for you. Here, it certainly was set up. I mean, it was all very carefully orchestrated and what information you get when, but it's so organic that you feel like you're really being a detective. Story-wise, there's also moments of just incredible drama, and told in these snapshot moments, it's incredibly effective. It's surprisingly effective. This is a great story. I mean, you saw one of the big dramatic moments earlier with the giant squid. Okay, great. But there's more, guys. You're going to want to dig into the story. It's crazy, and it's convincing, too, and just plain emotional, I feel like. Adding on to that, I think that all of these elements come together to create a really great atmosphere of being in another time and another place, on this ship that's so convincingly rendered, and seeing these moments play out in front of your eyes, and connecting the dots between, oh, and then this happened, and then this happened, and that guy did that. You get a sense of emotionally where some of these characters are. Politically, there's all kinds of power struggles going on the ship, and there's these just absolutely catastrophic moments where who knows what can go wrong, and people dealing with what's happened to those around them as basically this doomed voyage just slowly sinks into oblivion. It's really, really affecting, and I think everything, the art, the sound, the gameplay, the way you piece things together in a sort of out of order and start to see them come together, it just gives you this sense that you're there on this ship again. The nature of the constraints that the design is under. Everything basically takes place on the ship. It's not a huge environment, but it's so detailed, so rich, and you were encouraged to get into all the nooks and crannies to figure out what you need to figure out. That makes it feel so real. It's really extraordinary. Okay, let's get to some things I can maybe complain about. Pretty small complaints, and I feel like this now is becoming a theme for these videos. I often have nitpicks with the interface. And in this case, interface may not quite be the right word. It's some choices. I won't say I know how they could be better. I haven't necessarily thought about it enough, but there's a few where my instincts say they could be done differently. I think I mentioned in the video when you first go to a vision and you are exploring, it forces you back to the book by that sort of closing aperture effect. And I want to say there's a better way to do that than just pulling the player out of it. Often I'm in the middle of trying to look at something in particular, and I don't know how long I'm going to have before it takes me back to the book. Now, maybe there's a reason that was the best option. Lucas Pope is a smart guy, clearly. So he might have tried other options, and that was the best. But I want to say there's a better way to do that. Also, the finding sort of secondary victims when you're in one vision. We saw it where your watch shakes a little bit, and it lets you. It changes the whole look of the environment, and the next body that you need to go to is glowing. That there's nothing wrong with it. Actually, I really like the trail of smoke that you follow is a cool effect. It's kind of fun, but it's not quite intuitive. Same thing with how obviously the doors need to open just sort of magically for you to let you into other parts of the ship. So you have to do that somehow. But the way they sort of turned out kind of fuzzy, I don't know that it communicates what they wanted it to communicate. Again, do I know the better way? Not necessarily. I'd have to put some time into thinking about it, and maybe there isn't one. But I felt like these things maybe needed just a little bit more consideration. Tiny issues. None of these get in the way of your enjoyment of everything that's so spectacular in this game. So don't let any of those things worry you. This is a game you just need to play. Check it out. One of the best indie releases of the year, easily this year. And you just need to play Return of the Obra Dinn. Well, that's it, guys. That's Return of the Obra Dinn. Those are my thoughts. Remember, subscribe to my channel, please, to get the next of these Indie Audition videos. And comment below about what you think about the game, what you think about my video and the playthrough. I'd love to hear what you think. If you're on Twitter, I'm on Twitter too. So check me out. Follow me at deck9_Floyd. Let's chat there as well. Last time in my Aztez video, I mentioned a special project, and it is still coming. So don't worry. It's just taking a little bit longer than I expected, and there will be an announcement as soon as I can confirm it. But some things that are not under my control are keeping that from being unveiled quite yet. I'm really happy I was able to show you Return of the Obra Dinn. In the meantime, sorry there was a bit of a delay in between this and the last video. It's because I was working on that special project. It's already underway, but I will get that started, and I'll let you know what it is in not too long from now. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Please chat with me. Let me know what you think, and we will see you next time for another Indie Audition.